The NAR, the National Association of Realtors, has just come to a settlement totaling over $400 million. We're going to talk about this settlement. We're going to talk about what this will mean for the broader real estate economy and what this will do to everyday home buyers and home sellers. The economy appears to be re-accelerating, and the Fed appears to no longer be poised to cause interest rates in 2024. Apartment supply surges in 2024 to the highest level we've seen in 50 years. And finally, the South Florida home market appears to be shifting more and more from a seller's market into a buyer's market. My name is Kelly Ogusoba. I am a licensed realtor down here in Palm Beach County, here to be your trusted source for real estate and market-related news. And this is a Jaguar and Crane production.
Quando a saudade bater, cê vai chorar, vai beber, vai ligar, querendo voltar.
DJ Lucas Beats.
Eu vou falar que não quero, beijando sua boca, falar que te odeio, tirando sua roupa, as em quatro paredes, num quarto escuro. Você vai ouvir o eu te amo por segundos. Eu vou falar que não quero, beijando sua boca, falar que te odeio, tirando sua roupa, mas em quatro paredes, num quarto escuro. Você vai ouvir o eu te amo por segundo, por segundo.
What's up, fam? If you're a returning viewer or if you're a new viewer, I want you to take this moment to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. This really does help out with our YouTube algorithm. It'll help get this video out to more viewers. And with that, let's begin. There's a lot to talk about today. The biggest news, it's what's going on with the National Association of Realtors. Realtors reach settlement that would change how Americans buy and sell homes. Wall Street Journal. The National Association of Realtors has reached a nationwide settlement of claims that the industry conspired to keep agents' commissions high. As a result of this settlement, the NAR agreed to abandon long-standing industry rules that have required most home sale listings to include an upfront offer telling buyer agents how much they'll get paid. Under a system in place for a generation, roughly about 30 years, sellers have typically set buyer agent fees. Consumer advocates say the arrangement has prevented buyers from negotiating to save money and kept commissions in the US higher than most of the rest of the world. Consumer advocates believe the settlement, totaling over $400 million, will make it easier for home buyers to negotiate fees with their own agents, and could lead to more buyers to forgo using agents altogether. Now, the association, for their defense, they claim that the current model, status quo, helps buyers benefit from an agent's advice, even if they can't afford to pay an agent out of pocket. If the settlement is approved by the federal court, listings of home sales in most parts of the country would no longer include upfront offers to buyers' agents, starting in mid-July. And buyers would be able to negotiate compensation upfront with their agents. In practical terms, it means that the National Association of Realtors was sued for conspiracy. They settled for $400 million. This means no one is liable, and they'll pay out this money over a certain amount of years. Now, what does this mean for home buyers and home sellers? What is the impact to us? Fundamentally, what this ruling does and what this settlement does, it effectively removes buyer's commission from the MLS. Buyers can still be paid a commission. Commission is still negotiable by buyer's agents. It's negotiable by seller's agents. So there's no fundamental change to the industry with regards to the nature of the business. But the crux of this ruling says you can no longer put buyer's commission on the MLS, or it can no longer be advertised on the MLS. There's no minimum for how much agents can charge for their work. They could charge as low as 0.5%, 1%, and there's no maximum. They can charge 4, 5, 6, 7, 8% for how much they think their worth is. All this stuff is negotiable. But this was true both before this ruling, and it's still true after this ruling. So I want my viewers to understand the main takeaway from this settlement is simply the fact that the buyer's agent commission is no longer going to be advertised on the MLS starting mid-July. Now, what does this mean? This means that for every seller who decides with their agent to no longer pay the buyer's agent commission, it will force the buyer to cough out that money on his or her own. This is going to mean a lot of agents may end up leaving the profession entirely, if it is true that a lot of the sellers just decide no longer to pay buyer's agents. But here's my prediction of how I think things will actually pan out. They may think, oh, I can forego an agent entirely. I don't need to use one. I'll go on Google, how to buy a home, etc., etc. Type, and I'll just wing it. Now, I look back to when I bought my first home. I don't think I could have done that without an agent. All the contracts I needed to read and understand, and how much I needed to bid for my home, and understanding the markets. This would have been very difficult for me to do, especially as a first-time buyer. My fear with this ruling is there will be a lot of people who go out there on a whim and they'll forego using an agent entirely and represent themselves. But let me ask you something. How can you represent yourself? Or let me phrase it this way. Is it even possible to represent yourself properly without having any access to MLS data and being able to compare that data with comparable properties to be able to advocate for your side as a buyer? The MLS remains the most accurate and most timely source for data when it comes to real estate. Now, the seller, they're still going to have an agent. If you're selling your home, you're going to hire an agent to sell your home. They will still have access to MLS data. But you as a buyer, you're going to go into a negotiation with no agent, no representation, and no access to MLS data. Now, I understand there'll be some people who are expert buyers, institutional investors, and who already have access to a lot of proprietary data, and they can do really well in a negotiation. But the average home seller and home buyer is not going to be the jack of all trades. They're still going to need buy-side representation. They're still going to need a realtor. I believe realtors will likely find a workaround around this ruling. So even though they can no longer advertise the buyer's agent commission on the MLS, they will probably find a way to negotiate that stuff behind the scenes or some other new business model where they can still incorporate the buyer's agent to be paid for by the seller. And there'll simply be a new industry standard. They won't be on the MLS, but it will be shifted to another form of business. Today's sellers are already used to paying for the buyer agent fees, so there's a lot of business and cultural inertia that in my view will still take place. I think business will continue as usual even after this ruling takes effect in July. Now, it's possible that in the long run, there's new brokerages, there's new business models that develop, right? That empower or enable buyers to choose a low-cost option when it comes to buy-side representation. But this will take some time to emerge. This won't be something that happens instantaneously. It'll happen over time. And if this does happen over time and it's proven to be effective, it could drive more agents from the market. Agents have already been leaving the space due to the fact of such low transaction volume. We've had the lowest transaction volume we've had in decades. So this ruling could add as a further catalyst to drive more realtors out of the business. There's also a belief that this ruling could possibly reduce home prices. I don't believe this to be true. The home prices will still always be set based on supply and demand. What is possible is that the home seller, not the buyer, but the home seller, could be able to shave off slightly more of their proceeds in a home sale that would have gone to a buyer's side agent, and is no longer going to a buyer's side agent. Now, moving forward, Apollo now states they believe that the Federal Reserve will no longer cut interest rates in 2024. This was an eye-popping article for me, and I actually think they have a pretty strong argument. Now, the first big point Apollo makes is that the economy is not appearing to slow down. It's actually appearing to reaccelerate. If we take a look at this graph here, since August of 2023, GDP expectations, growth expectations, have continued to go up. And ever since the Fed made this pivot in December, telling everyone they were going to cut rates, we see that GDP expectations have jumped even further. So we have an economy where most people are expecting GDP growth to actually keep growing. Let's go to the next point. Core Consumer Price Index. What are we seeing? When we look at this graph, we see what? We see core services CPI. This is the changes to the price of goods and services, excluding food and energy. What has this been doing since the middle of last year? This has also been going up. This is month over month CPI inflation. Right now, we're looking at roughly 0.6% growth month over month. 0.6%, this is very high. We need something like 0.2, 0.15 if we're trying to hit a 2% annual inflation target. At 0.6, you multiply that by 12 months in a year, you're looking at north of 7.2% inflation for the year. We are re-accelerating. And when we dig into the numbers further, if we look at supercore inflation, this is the metric highly valued by the Federal Reserve. Supercore inflation has been stuck at around 4% and is actually starting to go back up to 5%. If supercore inflation is sitting at 5%, I do not see the Federal Reserve cutting interest rates. And when we look at the labor market, look at wage inflation. Wage inflation historically, if we go all the way back to January of 2010, we're looking at 2% per year wage increases, right? 2% per year. Today, we're 2 times that. We're north of 4% wage inflation. If we're trying to get inflation to 2% and the wage increases are at 4% per year, it just means the economy today is still overheated. And so the Federal Reserve, again, just does not have good reasons to cut the interest rates. When we look at what small businesses are doing, small businesses appear, at least more and more of them appear to say, hey, we are going to increase prices over the next year. If you look at what small businesses say they're going to do and how this ties to the CPI inflation metric, it tends to go hand in hand. So now that we have businesses saying they're going to start increasing prices over the course of the next year, we can expect this inflation number to start going up. So in summary, what do we see? We see businesses are trying to increase the prices over the next year. We see supercore inflation is sitting on a still sticky 4%, it's actually going to 5%. We see CPI readings, if we do that over a 12-month annual basis, 0.6% over a month easily goes to 7% or even more than that, right? We see an economy where the unemployment rate is still below 4%. We see an economy that is re-accelerating. And so there's less of a reason for the Fed to cut interest rates at this point. I don't think they're going to do it. Now, in my prior videos, we've talked about how prices have been going up across the United States for home buyers and also for people looking for a place to rent. If we take a look at this graph, the percentage of income people spend on rent has been continually increasing year after year after year since 2020, to the point where people who need to rent by necessity are spending over 30% of their income, 30% of their paycheck is just going to rent. Now we have some good news. The good news is that a record amount of apartments, of construction will be taking place over the next year that will boost the supply of rental properties on the market, which in turn should help decrease the price of rental properties. Let's take a look at these numbers. If we look at year 2024, we're looking at nearly 1 million new US multifamily units under construction set to hit the market in 2024. This is the highest number we've seen in 53 plus years. We've never seen numbers this high. Nearly 1 million apartment units under construction, and most of them are set to open during the next 12 months. And this increase in construction and the supply of apartment rentals available will help decrease the price. And we're already beginning to see some movement here. Median rent increases have finally started to go negative. Home prices are still increasing year over year. That's this dark line here, right? This dark line has remained above zero, so we're having price increases year after year. Whereas for apartments, for rentals, we're actually beginning to see the median US rent begin to decrease year over year. We can expect this trend to continue as the amount of construction and supply increases in the US market. Renters, it does appear to be that there'll be more price pressure pushing down on rental prices, which will help renters. And finally, we're going to talk a little bit about the Florida market. The Florida market is changing, and it's changing quick. It's changing quick. We're going to go through a few graphs, and then finally we're going to talk about inventory. Inventory really changes the market. It really changes the prices of the homes. And we're going to talk about some interesting developments that we're seeing in the inventory space. So first off, the general trends of South Florida markets stay the same. The median price for a home in the Miami-Dade County is $650,000, up 17% from a year ago. Inventory has been going up around 8% from a year ago. But let's just take a look at this. Let's look at Broward County. Broward County is $625,000, up 12% from a year ago. Look at the inventory. Inventory is up 23% from a year ago. 23%. That's a big number. If we go to Palm Beach County, what do we see? Median sale prices also $615,000, up 12%. Inventory is up 26%. If we go to Port St. Lucie, the median sale price of a home is $390,000, up 5%. Look at the inventory, it's up 22%. Now, in my last video, we talked about the concept of months supply of inventory, where if you were around 5.5, 6 months supply of inventory, we're kind of in a neutral market. Anything below that is actually a seller's market, and anything above that is actually a buyer's market. When we look at single family homes in Palm Beach County, what do we notice? We notice the inventory has been creeping up since the middle of 2021 through 2022, through 2023, and into 2024. As of February, we now have 4.4 months supply of inventory. So we are creeping more and more and more into a neutral market, and maybe eventually even into a buyer's market. This is for single family homes. When we double click on this and we look what's going on with condominiums, look at that. February 2024, 6.3 months supply of inventory. Inventory is shooting up in South Florida. In Miami, Broward, Palm Beach County, Port St. Lucie. We're seeing this trend continue throughout South Florida. We're seeing the supply of homes increase across the United States. So we think we might be at an inflection point where we're finally leaving the seller's market, where we've had this continual pricing increases, more into a neutral market, and eventually into a buyer's market, where the prices will begin to start to be driven down. For condominiums, it appears we're already in a buyer's market. So if you're looking to buy a new home as a buyer, you have your most strength right now looking to purchase a condominium than you would have purchasing a single family home. All right, guys, if you liked today's video, please see me here again next month, where I can give you the latest and greatest on real estate and market related news to help you all make better informed decisions. All right, take care.
Baby, oh yeah, make we do paradise, not me and you. Baby, 1 + 1 now you. Only when you chop out you.